If you do not mind, then appreciate my efforts by subscribing to my channel. Thank you very much in advance.
Now we'll tell you about another crazy battle that took place during the most successful military operation of the armed forces of Ukraine against a group of Russian troops. This information was collected bit by bit from hundreds of sources. The counteroffensive of the armed forces of Ukraine is still ongoing. So many facts have not yet received wide publicity, and the names and call signs of the heroes have not yet been included in the award lists. Get comfortable and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. So, by the beginning of September, the Ukrainian army managed to accumulate significant forces near Kharkov and create an advantage in a limited sector of the front. The direction of the main offensive was the city of Balakleya-Kharkov region. The Russians occupied this city in the first week of the invasion on March 3rd. The liberation began on 6 September. The Russians were expecting an attack, so they were preparing to repel an assault on the city. However, the Ukrainian shock groups acted outside the box. They first came close to Balakleya, and then unexpectedly bypassed the city from the northwest. The composition of the attacking groups was also unusual. A tank operated at the head of each small wedge, followed by 2 armored personnel carriers. 30 to 50 infantrymen completed the group. There were dozens of such groups. Tankers of the 92nd Separate Mechanized Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, 92nd OMBR APU, acted at the forefront of each. Movement took place along the main and secondary routes and country roads. Weak spots in the defense of the Russians turned out to be at the junctions of responsibility. These are sections of the front where the area of responsibility of one unit ends and the area of responsibility of another begins. The undulating plain in this area is characterized by a large elevation difference. Each descent is followed by a long ascent, so any object is visible on the road. It takes a tank 15 to 30 minutes to get from one hilltop to another. All this time, it remains an easy target for a shooter with a grenade launcher or ATGM. Therefore, the raid by Ukrainian groups can't be called a cakewalk. But the most dangerous moment is the first moments when the tank reaches the top of the hill, because the crew does not see what lies ahead. This feeling is impossible to get used to. At such points, as a rule, there is a checkpoint made of concrete blocks from where it is convenient to fire with any anti-tank weapon. The tank becomes a defenseless rhinoceros in the hunter's scope for a few seconds. Fortunately, the soldiers of the Russian Guard were on duty at the rear checkpoints. Their specialization is power support during special operations. Anti-tank warfare is not part of their responsibilities. Deep raids at several points caused panic and disorientation in the rear of the Russians. The advanced tanks of the 92nd Brigade smashed the rear checkpoints. The heavy fire of the Ukrainian armored personnel carriers cut off the Russian infantry, which dug in the forest belt along the road. The Ukrainians quickly took control of the forks in the road until the main forces approached, and then rushed further. Due to the rapid change in the combat situation, the Russian artillery did not know where to shoot. Russian aviation was also powerless. It was impossible to recognize friend or foe in such a mess from the air. The Russian attack aircraft pilots did not have operational data, so there was a big risk of running into a Ukrainian Stinger or hitting their own. But the Ukrainians managed to coordinate their actions in real time. Starlink stations have become a useful acquisition. The Starlink terminal fits into a soldier's backpack. Thanks to satellite internet, the forward detachments of the armed forces of Ukraine quickly exchanged information and coordinated their actions. Thus, the Ukrainians created several deep wedges on a small section of the front. Chaos broke out behind Russian lines. They abandoned equipment and weapons, left ammunition depots, and fled to Kupiansk in order to gain a foothold on the eastern bank of the Oskol River. This river divides the city in half. The Russian troops needed time to regroup and organize a new line of defense there. The Ukrainians turned this counteroffensive into a series of small strikes and skirmishes. Each such battle is worthy of a separate story. We will focus on a short clash in a village near Kupiansk, which decided the fate of this city. By the beginning of the third day of the counteroffensive, The suburb of Kupiansk had turned from a deep Russian rear into a gray zone. The forward strike groups of Ukrainian troops have already advanced about 60 to 65 miles. The Russians had nothing to meet the tanks of the 92nd Ukrainian Brigade. The first and second lines of defense of the Russians and combat-ready formations were already in the rear of the Ukrainians under heavy artillery fire. The Russian command organized the delivery of equipment by air. Cargo helicopters with armored personnel carriers and self-propelled guns landed one by one on the eastern bank of Oskol. In addition, reinforcements were sent from the deep rear to Kupiansk. Kupiansk is an important logistical point. The city is connected by rail with the Russian junction station, Velyuky. Echelons with equipment and ammunition for the Russian group of troops in the east of the Luhansk region went through Kupiansk. To delay the rapid advance of the Ukrainian troops, the Russians removed sniper teams into the gray zone. Time ticked by. At first glance, it may seem that the snipers have nothing to oppose the tanks and armored personnel carriers of the 92nd Brigade. Actually, this is not the case. Once upon a time, snipers operated alone. So it was in World War II.